When this boy sat on the throne, everyone laughed. The state counted his age. His enemies underestimated him. But no one asked the real question. What if this child wasn't afraid? What if stepping back was never an option? There was a city that had stood for 1,000 years, a city said to be unconquerable, and standing before it was a child. His name was Mehmed. He would either take that city, or history would erase him. They call him Fatih Sultan Mehmed, the man who conquered Istanbul. But no one tells you this part. Before everything else, this boy was alone. When his father, Murad II, stepped down from the throne, Mehmed was still a child. The statesmen were cautious. Europe was hungry. Crusader armies began to move again. Hungarian cavalry pressed the borders. Serbian fortresses stood on alert. The papacy declared the Ottoman state weak, and war began. At Varna, the ground turned to mud. Swords shattered. Horses fell. That day, Mehmed learned that war is not something you understand from books. At Kosovo, the battlefield was covered with bodies. Victory was achieved, but the price was heavy. There was nothing romantic about war. Then Mehmed was removed from the throne. Too early, they said. The burden is too heavy, they said. Something broke that day. But he did not surrender. When he returned to the throne for the second time, he was no longer a child. He was merciful, but not inexperienced. Quiet, but not uncertain. Everyone knew his target, Constantinople. The Byzantine walls had resisted countless sieges. They had shattered armies, burned attackers, consumed kingdoms. Mehmed looked at those walls and saw that they could fall. Cannons were cast, day and night. With every shot, the walls shook, the city trembled. Byzantine soldiers pulled back in fear. But the city was still standing. The Golden Horn was sealed with a massive chain. "You cannot pass," they said. Mehmed didn't just pass. He moved the ships overland, in a single night, silently. When Byzantium awoke the next morning, the war was already behind them. From that moment on, the siege stopped being a war. It became a fight to survive. Days passed. The soldiers were hungry. There were wounded everywhere. Morale began to collapse. Mehmed could have withdrawn, but he didn't. When the final assault was ordered, the sun was just rising. Drums thundered, battle cries echoed, cannons spoke one last time, and the walls fell. On May 29th, Constantinople was taken. Byzantium was finished. An age ended. A new one began. But Fatih did not stop. Fortresses in Serbia fell one by one. Resistance in the Morea was crushed. The empire of Trebizond was erased. Ottoman ships began to dominate the seas. The Black Sea became an Ottoman lake. These conquests did more than redraw maps. They spread fear. Fatih was no longer just a sultan. He was a threat. He set his eyes on Rome. He pushed the west. Troops landed at Otranto. Europe held its breath. But history sometimes stops the greatest plans in the quietest moments. In 1481, as Fatih Sultan Mehmed was preparing for another campaign, he suddenly fell ill. There was no sword beside him, no walls, no cannons, only the exhaustion of his body. One morning inside his tent, he died in silence. He was only 49 years old. Behind him he left conquered cities, destroyed empires, and a world forever changed. Fatih Sultan Mehmed was not just the man who took Istanbul. He was the story of a child no one took seriously who forced history to take him seriously.